Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today is a very special one, the Clasica Jaen. This race is one of the races in the one-day scene and has really gained some traction in the last few years as a gravel race. But nonetheless, we joined the race with 65.6 kilometers to go with these two riders up the road with a 1 minute and 15 second margin. There were a lot of sectors still to come in the race and had been already, but behind Kwiatkowski of Organisers was attacking, and he was joined by two other riders, one of which was Brandon McNulty of UAE Team Emirates. The big super teams marking each other out here, and they were trying to make the gap up to the riders. But behind this, Melissa bike had lost out, and they were trying to up the tempo to bridge this. But one Colombian national champion, EGAN Bernal, was quick to guard that. We also then saw WOUT VAN AERT, who was having a bit of trouble himself as he was caught out in the wrong selection. So before long, he had to make a bit of an effort to bridge across. So WOUT VAN AERT, he was going to use this as more as a training ride potentially. In that second group with McNulty and Kwiatkowski, they were making inroads to the riders up in front, now down to 53 seconds, and they were joined by another rider as well. Behind them, this Melissa bike who had missed out were being marked by UAE Team Emirates and Organisers, and there were a lot of other riders also in there, notably the Decathlon AG2R. The two riders up in front with 62 kilometers to go still had a margin of 47 seconds over the chasers, and this roundabout they almost lost out because they went the wrong way and one of the riders came a bit unstuck. Behind the three riders chasing with Kwiatkowski and Brandon McNulty, joined with a French rider from Burgos BH. However, behind this Melissa bike still had three riders in this very truncated peloton and were doing their best to reduce the gap as well. With just about 60 kilometers to go, this duo, they were the first ones to make it into sector 3. The Juan Caballo, a 3.6 kilometer long gravel section, and here in the chasing group, Kwiatkowski made sure that he was the man who was going to lead this trio into this, and they had reduced the gap down to 21 seconds at this point. Brendan McNulty was putting a bit of pressure himself on the incline part of the section, so he was making sure that they were going to make the catch with only 17 seconds to go up to the leading duo. The leading duo were suffering at the front. The Kern Farmer and the Rural rider, they were doing their best here, but the catch was imminent. WOUT VAN AERT was the man behind leading the chase for the peloton, with EGAN Bernal sitting on his wheel and making sure to cover any moves that would come from behind. The second group could see the front duo, and before long the catch was made and that duo turned in to a quintet at the front. WOUT VAN AERT was the rider who took them out of the section as well, but there was a section coming up very shortly as well for the peloton group. In front, the Rural rider was desperately trying to put some pressure in here. The peloton group did have a bit of a delay as they had a crash coming into one of these corners, and from the replay we could see it was one of the Melissa bikes, not WOUT VAN AERT, that came unstuck and slid into the corner but looked slightly unscathed, as shortly after it was this Melissa bike putting the pressure on to maintain that pressure on the front and deter any attacks. When they came out of the gravel section, this Melissa bike were throwing down some attacks, but that was being marked by AG2R and UAE Team Emirates, and we could see the damage that had been done in that crash to the young Igor Areta of UAE Team Emirates. That attack did force a selection at the front. AG2R, this Melissa bike, Organisers with EGAN Bernal was there, and Sepp Kuss was the this Melissa bike rider with Isaac Del Toro and Nicolas Prudhomme of AG2R. But EGAN Bernal well and truly on super domestique duties here for Kwiatkowski. The front group was being led up by Brendan McNulty, and they were in another gravel section, but Sepp Kuss in that group behind was trying to up the pace here. Del Toro and EGAN Bernal very dangerous in there, Nicolas Prudhomme as well, but Sepp Kuss was really upping the pace and no one was able to follow the American. In the front group we could see the Pro Continental riders were really starting to suffer as Kwiatkowski was putting down the hammer, and before long it was only the Kern Farmer rider who was in that group. Behind this, Melissa bike had gotten some sort of calm in the chasing group with UAE Team Emirates marking every move, and before long Fabio Christen was coming towards the front, the man who won a race recently for Q36.5. The front group was only 4 riders as they were coming down this gravel descent, and even the cameraman was quite impressed with the pace. Behind, Visma Bike was still making sure to manage the distance, and they were starting to pick out the riders from the front move that had just dropped back. But that didn't last long as Group 2 dynamics set in, and here we saw that AG2R started to attack, and that was being covered by UAE Team Emirates. Ineos Grenadiers was scrambling to try and get in that move as well, and here we have a very impressive move. Pay attention to that rider there. That is EGAN Bernal, and see how quickly he actually makes it his way up past his teammate and desperately gets into that move because it's dangerous for Ineos. And before long, you can see EGAN Bernal just there in the rear mirror for the two other riders, and he's closed that gap very quickly, just showing how good a form EGAN Bernal has here. That trio were making their way up with Wellens and the AG2R rider. However, that move was swiftly brought back by WOUT VAN AERT, who was suddenly turning into the policeman of this chasing group with 45 seconds up to the Kwiatkowski group. But WOUT VAN AERT was doing a very good turn here at the front, making sure that everything was being policed, even on the gravel sector. He was here, there and everywhere, really just showing his super domestique duties here, and maybe that was for some extra chaining. The front group were working well together with Kwiatkowski and McNulty, and the Kern Farmer rider just sitting on the back of these two World Tour stars. WOUT VAN AERT was still pushing on in that second group despite Visma Bike not having more than one other rider. The gap was 32 seconds and UAE Team Emirates was lining up behind him. He quickly grabbed a feed as well for himself. Meanwhile, out in front, it was still Kwiatkowski and Brandon McNulty, whilst WOUT VAN AERT was doing his best impersonation of Nils Pollitt with so many UAE riders behind him with 31.4 kilometers to go. Kwiatkowski was looking around. He was getting a bit nervous about the WOUT VAN AERT train looking behind, but shortly after, WOUT VAN AERT went out the back, pop, duty's done, 30 kilometers to go, and he handed it over to the rest of the field with only one Visma Bike rider in there. Kwiatkowski seemed to have heard the news as he upped the tempo, or seemed to, on the incline, with Brandon McNulty sitting in that tuck position. But riders were trying to bridge the gap, and Ineos Grenadiers were making sure to cover any moves in that third group. And the third group was shortly joined by 3 other riders that included 2 Ineos riders. The second group on the road that got away was with Tim Wellens, EGAN Bernal, and Jordan Labrosse of AG2R. We saw an attack here from Connor Swift, the teammate of EGAN Bernal. He was covering Tim Wellens, making sure that he was doing the work. Connor Swift did a great job to get up the road, but it was quickly brought back by Tim Wellens. Before long, this group was almost joined back together with Group 3. However, we saw more flashes of brilliance from EGAN Bernal as he attacked hard, with this move being marked by Labrosse, Tim Wellens and Connor Swift to some extent. So they sat up and waited to be brought back into the peloton. Up front, the riders were once again making their section to the Juan Caballo, and Kwiatkowski was keeping a stern pace. And as the fragmented peloton came up towards this group, it was AG2R leading them in, with Ineos Grenadiers making sure they had numbers up to mark any moves with 25.8 kilometers to go. Del Grosso was still in this group, and Ineos had plenty of riders in here, and there were 3 French riders from different teams as well. As they were on this section, last time we had riders crash. This time it was the motorbike cameraman that had taken a tumble, and the riders had to make sure that they didn't hit the motorbike riders. But AG2R was still the ones leading this peloton. In the front group, we had Brandon McNulty leading Kwiatkowski, with the Kern Farmer rider still sitting as a stowaway, 20.5 kilometers to the finish for these riders. Behind, we had Group 2 dynamics going on, with no one really wanting to get up the road, and Ineos Grenadiers and UAE, of course, had one rider up there. Visma Bike only had 2 riders of Ben Tollett and Sepp Kuss left in the group. However, that didn't deter them from trying something. Towards the front, Brandon McNulty once again on the incline really ramped up the pace here, and Kwiatkowski looked in a spot of bother, but the Kern Farmer rider looked like he was doing quite well. But in the peloton group, UAE Team Emirates put on a very fierce attack, and this was marked by EGAN Bernal once again, who was still on those super domestique duties. Here we could really see that UAE Team Emirates were not content with the situation. Visma Bike was still the ones losing out, and EGAN Bernal was determined not to let the UAE rider get up the road. 14.7 kilometers to go, and we had the nightmare situation for Brandon McNulty, and that was a flat in the worst part of the course on a downhill. He was struggling to see if he could actually just keep on going. It was a bit of a worrisome moment for him. Should he stop? Should he carry on? But he ended up stopping, with the neutral service motorbike helping him. At the front, we now only had Kwiatkowski and the Kern Farmer rider. 13.1 kilometers, 3.2 kilometers left of the section. Now UAE Team Emirates had McNulty in there as well, but no rider up the front, and this was a nightmare situation for them. Isaac Del Toro was still in here. EGAN Bernal was still on policing duties on behalf of Kwiatkowski. At the front, Kwiatkowski got tired of the stowaway and attacked him hard, and before long, Kwiatkowski had dislodged him and he was on his own here with 12 kilometers from the finish and 2.1 kilometers of this gravel sector to go. But Kwiatkowski, the former world champion and Strade Bianche champion, was on his own. Behind, Isaac Del Toro, equally annoyed, was attacking the peloton group and managed to get rid of Egan Bernal and everyone, and now the Mexican was on his own. The fourth group on the road, or the mini peloton, the best of the rest, was made of AG2R, VS Melissa bike, and one of the Ineos Grenadiers riders. But Kwiatkowski still had a healthy lead up in front, but it was shrinking due to this hungry Mexican youngster, Isaac Del Toro, with less than 11 kilometers to go. AG2R were determined to get something out of this after a strong performance, but Kwiatkowski, with 10 kilometers to go, was simply dancing across the gravel, with Isaac Del Toro 35 seconds behind him. The best of the rest from the peloton had Group 2 dynamics and couldn't quite work together, with Ineos Grenadiers and UAE Team Emirates having riders up the front. Nevertheless, Kwiatkowski at the front was doing his best here with 8.7 kilometers to go and really getting into our aero tuck position. AG2R had enough and attacked hard with La Brousse, and that was being marked and cancelled out by Ineos Grenadiers. Isaac Del Toro was doing his best with 6.6 kilometers to go to reduce the gap, but Kwiatkowski looked like he had this one in the bag, but did look behind just in case. But before long, Isaac Del Toro saw the stowaway of Ruiz, the Kern Farmer rider, and shortly went up to the Spanish rider, and the Spanish rider even signaling for them to work together, and Isaac Del Toro duly did so. Kwiatkowski came into the final gravel sector and was in a league of his own. That third group on the road still wasn't working well together. Nothing was happening for them, and behind, with under 2 kilometers to go, it was Isaac Del Toro pushing on, but he knew that the victory was out of sight. Then the confirmation came. Kwiatkowski, the two-time Strade Bianche champion, was going to add Clasica Jaen to his trophy cabinet. The realization came and the arms went up in the sky. What a victory. Del Toro gets second place, and the third place came for the stowaway of Ruiz. Well done, and big results for many of the teams. Kwiatkowski in disbelief, and well and truly a remarkable result. But there you have it. There's the confirmation. Ineos Grenadiers even getting Axel Laurens in there as well, one of their new riders, and Ben Turner. Meanwhile, Brendan McNulty unfortunately was in 10th place. Nevertheless, that's basically it for this video. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and comment down below what you thought of this exemplary race as well, and we look forward to more gravel this year. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and thank you the Clasica Jaen organisers for this as well. But until next time, thank you for watching, and I will see you around.